Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today we're checking out this monoblack Reanimator deck featuring a Songbird, a Sonic Screamer as our commander, a 2-mana 2/1 with a lifelink, and we can discard a card at any point to give Songbird flying until end of turn. And it's the discard ability that we're most interested in, because now we have a cheap discard outlet built right into the command zone, so we can fill our deck with expensive creatures, cheaply get them into the graveyard, and then use our various reanimation spells to get those creatures onto the battlefield. So then if we take a look at our deck breakdown, I've split it up into a few different categories, starting with a little bit of mana acceleration. The goal is often to cast Songbird on turn 2, so then most of our ramp artifacts cost 3 mana, so we can then cast our reanimation spell, which often costs 5 mana on the following turn. Then we have some interaction, we have some discard effects to disrupt the opponent's hand to take away counter spells, we have a lot of spot removal and even some sweeper effects, and then we get to the reanimation spells, since we ideally want to have one of these in our opening hand. They usually cost 5 mana, but there are some cheaper variants, which will of course make things more exciting, and often at 5 mana they also come with a few additional upsides in addition to just bringing back one creature. Then we have a few entomb effects. Of course, the most efficient one is 1 mana as an instant, but we also have some more expensive variants that can search up whatever creature we want and put it straight into the graveyard. So then if we pair that with a reanimation spell, we can potentially even bypass Songbird and get whatever we want. Then we've got some additional card draw effects, some card draw engines that can repeatedly draw cards or fill the graveyard for us. That way we can smooth out our draws, so we draw a good mix of interaction, reanimation effects, and then reanimation targets, because we don't want to draw too many cards of that same category. And then last but not least, we've got our finishers, the big creatures that we're hoping to discard from our hand or search up with our entomb effects to put straight into the graveyard. And these are often game-ending threats that can single-handedly take over a game or even destroy opposing creatures when they enter the battlefield. So that's our deck in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, starting with mana acceleration. Dark Ritual can lead to some explosive starts. We've got the Soul Stone, which can also later be harnessed to reanimate creatures from the graveyard, and in the meantime an indestructible artifact that taps for a black. Arcane Signet can also immediately tap for a black mana. And then we've got Heraldic Banner at 3, giving black creatures 1 additional power, also good with lifelink. There's a Phial of Galadriel. If we maybe discard all the cards from our hands with Songbird, now when drawing a card we get to draw 2 instead, and can also gain additional life with a lifelink, so there's multiple synergies with Songbird. The Relic of Legends can also maybe tap Songbird to make an extra mana, and the Worn Power Stone makes 2 mana once we get to untap with it. Then moving on to our interaction, we've got a few removal spells. Bone Shards also doubles up as a discard outlet in case maybe Songbird gets countered. We can still discard a large creature with the Bone Shards while taking out a creature or planeswalker. Same with a Bitter Triumph at 2 mana, which is an instant speed version. We also have Cut Down and Fatal Push. And then a free removal spell in the form of Snuff Out. If we control a swamp, we can pay 4 life to destroy a non-black creature. Dismember can also pay a bunch of life to cast it for 1 mana. Then we also have, at 2 mana, the Infernal Grasp, paying 2 life, since we can easily make up for it with a lifelink. Sheoldred's Edict, another answer to Planeswalkers. And then we've got a few targeted discard spells with Duress for non-creature spells, Inquisition for cheaper non-land cards, and Thoughtseize, costing 2 life, can take any non-land card. And then we also have Grief, which we can also maybe evoke, pitching a black card from our hand, and then even reanimate later at some point, so also has good synergy. And then we've got 2 sweepers, the classics, Toxic Deluge, paying a bunch of life, can also get around Indestructible or other protection effects, and then Damnation, destroying all creatures, they cannot be regenerated. Then we move on to our reanimation spells, where of course Reanimate is by far the most powerful one, as it only costs 1 mana. There's Persist, which can get back a non-legendary creature, putting a -1 counter on it, so it does restrict what creatures we can get back, but we do have a reasonable mix of legendary and non-legendary creatures. Then the Necromancy at 3 mana is still very efficient. Victimize requires a sacrifice, but then we can bring back 2 creatures at once, which is usually not a problem. Blood for Bones also requires a sacrifice, so we can once again sacrifice our commander, reanimate a creature from our graveyard, and get another creature back in hand, which maybe could be that same commander that we left in the graveyard as opposed to sending back to the command zone. Then Zombify at 4 mana is still quite efficient. And then we get to the 5 mana reanimation spells, which is most of them. Bond of Revival gives a creature haste until end of turn, which can also make a difference. Defossilize lets that creature explore twice, so that can give it additional counters or maybe draw some lands. There's Evil Reawakened, also enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters. Prison Break we can actually cast for 4 mana if we discard it with Songbird and then cast it through Mayhem. So that's an additional 4 mana reanimation spell where the creature enters with 1 extra counter. Unbreakable Bond gives a creature a lifelink counter. Yawgmoth's Vile Offering is a legendary sorcery, so it does require a legendary creature or planeswalker in play, but then if we cast it, it's one of our more powerful effects, as it also doubles up as removal for opposing creatures or planeswalkers, while reanimating a creature or planeswalker from our graveyard. There's the Coiling Rebirth, which can potentially gift the opponent a card, and then if we reanimated a non-legendary creature, we get to make an extra 1/1 version of it. Can be very nice in the case of some of our Enter the Battlefield abilities. And then a Liliana Death's Majesty is a planeswalker that can generate 2/2 zombie tokens, but can also immediately -3 to reanimate a creature and even turn it into a zombie, which then has additional synergy with a -7 ultimate. Live or Die can double up as removal, but can also be an instant speed reanimation spell for 5. And then the Cruelty of Gix can immediately read ahead to Chapter 3 to reanimate a creature from our graveyard, but can also start from Chapters 1 or 2, where we get to make the opponent discard a creature or planeswalker, or maybe tutor up whatever card we want at the cost of 3 life. And then we move on to our Entomb effects. Of course, at 1 mana, there's the instant speed version. Then at 2 mana, Unmarked Grave can put a non-legendary creature in our graveyard, kind of the counterpart of Persist. Then the Lively Dirge with Spree will cost 3 mana to put 1 card in the graveyard, whereas Buried Alive can put up to 3 creatures in our graveyard, so it can also set up some powerful combos with Arden plus maybe another creature, so that can also be quite powerful. And then moving on to our card draw effects, there's the Knight's Whisper to draw 2 at the cost of 2 life, gets a nod over Sign in Blood, since we do have a few colorless sources in the mana base. The Ripples of Undeath can mill 3 cards each turn, can also pay a mana and 3 life to put one of those cards into our hand. Black Market Connections is usually making treasure and drawing cards each turn. The Phyrexian Arena will just draw 1 card at the cost of 1 life, and then Dire Sight can surveil 2 and then draw 2 cards at the cost of 2 life, so it can also potentially fill the graveyard for us. And then our big creatures start out with Crabomination, which is on the smaller side, also realistic to hardcast. We've got Massacre Worm as a sweeper for smaller creatures. Shieldred to Whispering One can repeatedly reanimate creatures from our own graveyard while making the opponent sacrifice a creature. There's a Sire of 7 Deaths with 7 different keywords. We've got Armagon, which can destroy up to 3 creatures when it enters. Arden is one of the more powerful ones, as it can in turn reanimate more creatures in the form of 5/5 black demons, and those demons will pick up Menace, Lifelink, and Haste. There's the Hoarding Broodlord as one of the more powerful non-legendary targets, which can then tutor up whatever we want, put it in exile, can even cast it with Convoke afterwards. We've got a Gristlebrand, which is banned in Commander, legal in Brawl, can pay 7 life to draw 7 cards on a 7/7 with Flying and Lifelink. We've got the Sundering Titan, which is great at punishing greedy mana bases. Valgavoth, also very powerful, exiling opposing cards that we can then cast paying a life. We've got Summon Bahamut, another one of the more powerful non-legendary targets, as we can destroy non-land permanents with Chapters 1 and 2. Triplicate Titan is a huge flyer with Vigilance and Trample, and if the opponent destroys it without exiling, we still get a bunch of 3/3 tokens out of it. And then Galactus is another nice recent addition for any Reanimator deck, as it will still trigger and exile target permanent when it enters, which is different from the various Eldrazi, which only trigger when you cast them, so reanimating Galactus is still good enough. And then our mana base has a few utility lands. Phyrexian Tower can maybe sacrifice Songbird to give us an extra mana to get to those 5 mana reanimation spells a turn sooner. There's Takenuma, which can also mill additional cards, and I'm running all the colorless Surveil lands when they enter the battlefield, which can also maybe fill the graveyard for us. And then Urborg can turn all our lands into swamps, which has a few cool synergies. And then we also have Castle Locthwain to maybe draw a few more cards if we're empty-handed. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, facing a blue-red artifact deck with Tony Stark. My hand has a lot of removal, but no reanimation spell. May also need some card draw if our opponent is on a more controlling build. Okay, this works. Let's Still looking for a reanimation spell, but Black Market Connections, if it resolves, can do a lot of work. The Interlacer, one of the more powerful alchemy artifacts. You're not going to find it in paper. So turn 2 Songbird. Can discard Crabomination and Broodlord if our opponent makes us. And now Shuri discounting artifacts by 1, so we could see some more spells. And now Unbreakable Bond, so that's perfect. Can play the connections, and then with the treasure we can cast a bond next turn. And yeah, I'm fine offering the trade. If our opponent blocks, I'll just discard Broodlord and Crabomination in response. Opponent takes it, so we can keep our plans a surprise. Artifact lands also trigger the Interlacer and a Hedron Archive, so yeah, they're going big. And a Metamorph can copy creatures or artifacts, so likely the Archive once again. That's a lot of mana. And a Palantir. Don't want my opponent drawing extra cards, although with the Interlacer they will be able to do so anyways. So I'll take the hit for now. And then I can start thinking about what to do here. I mean, honestly, I could also let them draw with a plan of reanimating a Crabomination and maybe hitting something expensive. Yeah, you know what? I'll lose a fair bit of life to the Black Market Connections. And Galactus is not a bad pickup. So we have options. I guess they don't have anything in Graveyard, so that maybe still would have been a reason to mill with a Palantir. Or I can get back Galactus, which can exile something. Probably an Archive. Then they still have quite a bit of mana to work with, but not quite as much. Or Broodlord, and then I can maybe still cast something with Convoke. You know what? Maybe that's the plan. Discard Broodlord and Galactus. And then I can bring back Broodlord, and then still Convoke or Reanimate to get back Galactus. So we get both. Persist is not going to work, because Galactus is legendary. So yeah, right now it has to be a Reanimate. And then I'll tap the Broodlord, so I can attack with Songbird. And let's blow up an Archive. Hit you for 2. So we are presenting pretty fast clock. Opponent goes digging with Interlacer. So they have 6 mana plus 1 more if it's an artifact. And MacLeod discounts artifacts by 1, so they can still cast Iron Man. Cold Steel Heart is free. So yeah, they have something like a Portal to Phyrexia in hand. They can still put it in play with Invincible Iron Man. Simulacrum will find a land. And a Cyclonic Rift to bounce Galactus. Alright, that was a big play here. Still have the life-linking Broodlord. So then I'm still hoping to draw a backup reanimation spell here. Palantir could kill me if I take the damage. So I think we let them draw. Find a Dire Sights. And a Grief. Grief was huge. So still do not have a reanimation spell. A little bit short of casting the Crabomination. But at the very least I can use Grief. Maybe pitching the Unmarked Grave at this point, since we can always discard Galactus. And then I can still deploy the Power Stone to help me cast a Crabomination. Or we could Dire Sight. Maybe first make sure that I actually gain some life here. See if they want to trade. They do not. So we're back up to 18. Yeah, we can Dire Sight first. Ripples and Banner. I don't think I have time for Ripples. We already have a Black Market Connections. A land would be more useful here, honestly. Alright, that works. So then I can still deploy the Power Stone and Grief. Pitch Unmarked Grave. Opponents had Krang in hand, as well as a Nexus of Becoming, so some powerful cards. Definitely take Krang. And then play Power Stone. And then we're not in immediate danger of dying. And next turn we can hope to draw another reanimation spell for Galactus. There's also a chance that Crabomination hits Krang, which can win us the game. Bonus digging with Archive. Ooh, Ghost Vacuum. That's rough. So they've got Graveyard Hate now. So I'll have to win by hardcasting my spells, which is not going to be easy. But that's where the Power Stone helps. Iron Man puts in the Nexus. At least they lost out on the Nexus trigger this turn by doing it this way. Take 9. And then, yeah, opponent gets to draw off Palantir so we don't die. Yeah, normally I'm an advocate of just losing as much life as possible, but when you're already losing a bunch of life yourself, that can be dangerous. Okay, so I mean, on the board we have 9 damage. Sadly, this is a Knight's Whisper and not a Sign in Blood, so I cannot just finish off my opponent here. But Crabomination still has a chance of doing it. Persist is not going to work with a Ghost Vacuum. I guess our opponent could potentially Ghost Vacuum their own Krang so they don't die, but then I do get to persist. So we'll see. We hit the Metamorph. And a Battleship, wow. So what are my options here? Metamorph, copy... What do we copy? Crabomination. Just do it again. That's kind of sweet. Battleship deals 4 to each creature. Does not answer the Iron Man. Inner Sun doesn't seem necessary. So I'm kind of liking the Metamorph here. Could also go for a Broodlord to get a removal spell. But that's kind of boring. Nexus does not give the token haste. I guess that would be a way for me to put Galactus onto the battlefield. Create a token that's a copy. So then I could put in Galactus and blow up something. So all considerations. Yeah, maybe that's the play. Make a Nexus. Go to combat. Find a Duress. Put in Galactus, which is also just an indestructible flyer, which can maybe block Iron Man. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Raph and Mikey, Troublemakers. So having some sort of instant speed removal could be nice. Alternatively, if we can just combo very quickly, that could also work. This hand has both Entomb and Unmark the Grave, but there are only reanimation spells at 5 with Cruelty. So this might be a little too slow. This time we have Thoughtseize, Ripples to try and find a reanimation spell, and then Songbird has 2 big creatures to discard. Could be good enough. Opponent has turn 1 Exploration to play an extra land, and then they have 2 payoffs in hand. I think we actually take the Wolfwillow Haven, because it will eventually run out all their lands, but the Haven actually generates an extra mana. And then there's a bunch of 7-drops we'll have to deal with. Opponent surveils. Infernal Grasp was a great draw, so that can help answer Raph and Mikey. For now, play the Ripples, so then next turn we can maybe pay the 1 and still play Songbird. And then we're mostly looking for a reanimation spell, maybe some extra mana. So our opponent up to 4 mana here. And 1 unknown in hand. And I'll certainly pay the 1. So I can go for the Signet to help me ramp, and then hope that next turn we mill some reanimation spell that I could technically already cast, or I can just grab the Bond of Revival, which also seems reasonable here. And then I don't think we'll need to keep up Infernal Grasp just yet, so I can run out Songbird, which can maybe gain us some life back. Alright, opponent found Chandra, that's a good top deck. Can potentially answer Songbird and ramp out Raph and Mikey next turn. Opponent just plussing.
This'll be easy.
So we'll have to keep up Infernal Grasp this turn. And File's a good draw. Ooh, Reanimate is even better here. So I can grab the Reanimates. And then can discard whatever I want here. And reanimate it back. Sundering Titan can blow up 2 of the opponent's lanes. Yavimaya doesn't really affect things. Well, it does allow me to blow up some of their other non-basics, I suppose. But then I still won't be able to deal with Chandra. But it does prevent them from casting their 7-drop. So I think I'm liking Sundering Titan over any of the alternatives here. Could also Broodlord and get Snuff Out, which is a free removal spell. But I would rather just prevent my opponent from casting their spells in the first place. So then, yeah, I don't think we need to keep up Infernal Grasp. We can just play File and Reanimate. I'll be losing a bunch of life here. So this is a command beacon. I think we just go for the 2 red sources. And then I have to target a swamp. And we'll attack Chandra. Although maybe at this point I'm better off going face so the Sundering Titan can finish off Chandra in one fell swoop. This will put me back up to 9. So then we should be safe. So our opponent has a bunch of green sources. Chandra can still make red this turn, but next turn we'll be able to take care of her. Our opponent found a Cultivate, that's actually a pretty good draw. So that can fix for red. But yeah, as long as I draw a land, I can still cast a Bond of Revival. Alright, Prison Break also works, since we can discard it to enable Mayhem, and then I cannot really afford to put anything in hand, unless of course we just grab the Edict and play kind of the control game. But if I Prison Break, what am I getting back? Would enter with an additional +1 counter, can discard the Broodlord or Valgavoth, and then we'll have dealt with Chandra. So I think that's good enough. So decline, discard, kind of liking Valgavoth here, and then discard the Prison Break. Cast a Prison Break, reanimating Valgavoth, and attack. Chandra down, and now we've got a huge lifelinker. And then we can cast Chandra at some point as well. But our opponent scoops it up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Bruce Banner, so opponent may be trying to cast the Incredible Hulk. Our hand has potential. The Edict can maybe answer Bruce. And then Buried Alive sets up Bond of Revival. And then with Buried, often going for Arden, and then a bunch more creatures. Shieldred, another one that can reanimate other creatures. So those are all considerations. Unmarked Grave. I can maybe wait on a bit longer. Just play Songbird for now. Could have gone Unmarked Grave into Banner, into Bond of Revival as a solid curve. But if we draw a creature, Songbird has its advantages. So, play the Banner. And then, seems worth it to fly over here. And then we're just hoping for a land so we can Bond of Revival, get back Shieldreds, and then Buried Alive can get more stuff that we can then reanimate. Our opponent likely playing with Moon Mist as well, which is a way of transforming their human into the Incredible Hulk. For now they're just gonna draw one card. They could of course also have a counterspell up, so this Bond of Revival is not guaranteed to resolve, but it seems worth a try. Yeah, opponent's got a memory lapse, so we get to try again next turn. In the meantime, hit for 3, gain 3. And the River Regent, Hardcast, yeah, that's a good one. Bouncing the Banner means I wouldn't be able to recast a Bond of Revival yet. So they're ahead on tempo. Can of course Shieldred's Edict, but it's not like there's anything too amazing for them to sacrifice. They can just lose the Halfling. So then I think we go Banner into the Unmarked Grave. And then a non-legendary creature, something like a Summon Bahamut could be decent to get some immediate value once we get it back. Could also go for Sundering Titan, since our opponent has several lands we can destroy. But then we still need to deal with what's in play. I think the plan is probably still to get Shieldred back first, and then hope Shieldred can reanimate another creature. Broodlord is also an option, and then we can tutor for a Sweeper. But I'll get the Summon Bahamut. And then next turn we can reconsider. So they could be going for the Incredible Hulk. Nope, opponent just drawing a card. And keeping up 4 mana. Which could be for a counterspell. Now we drew Necromancy, so that gives us a cheaper reanimation spell as well. But it's not like, again, the Sheoldred's Edict would do much for me. So then I would rather go for the known Bond of Revival. And Sheoldred has drawbacks if our opponent can, let's say, bounce her. But if it can stick the landing, it's still the best thing we've got. May as well attack. So far so good. Opponent has to sack a creature. Has the Tidebinder to stop the trigger. Alright, that's a very nice answer. So then Sheoldred's also not getting back Summon Bahamut, but Necromancy can maybe answer the Tidebinder. So had we gone for Summon Bahamut, things would have lined up pretty poorly, since they could have stopped the trigger with Tidebinder. Regent decides to play defense. I mean, my opponent is at 9, so just getting Summon Bahamut to destroy the Regent to attack for 7 may be the way to go. Or, since we have the Buried Alive, I can actually just set up whatever I want here in my graveyard. So then we can go for Arden, and the future Shark can destroy 3 creatures. And then what else? Something like Galactus or Hoarding Broodlord. Seems good. So we'll get Arden, which in turn gets the Shark, and then our opponent's just dead on board here. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Hei Bai. Wouldn't be a Brawl video without it. This hand has a lot of potential. We've got Snuff Out as free removal, Dark Ritual to ramp out the Rebirth, and then Siren, the future Shark, to reanimate. So, we have a lot of creature removal. We do not have any real interaction for their enchantments. For now, we'll pass. Let them keep the Halfling. And then we can maybe clean it up with a Shark at some point. And Nessian Wanderer is fine. Alright, Urborg. So we can surveil. Don't need another swamp. Play Songbird. So then if they just tap out for Hei Bai, I can discard the Shark and bring it back. Now we're not making full use of the Rebirth, because we're not going to make a legendary copy. But still seems better than going for Sire of 7 Deaths. Alright, Arden is exciting. So now what I can do is discard Arden and discard the Shark. And then just ritual out the Rebirth. And just bringing back the one creature. Go to attackers. Destroy all the opponent's creatures. And now I've got a pretty fast clock as well. Still have a Snuff Out in hand. Maybe should have waited a bit longer on Urborg, since I might be fixing the opponent's colors for black. Life's Origin. So they will trigger the Air Temple here. Yeah, that seems fine to Snuff Out for now. And a Vile Offering is pretty great too, although cannot cast it at the moment. So then I could discard the Sire, Or I can go for the opponent's Life's Origin with Arden. I guess the extra keywords are still maybe more relevant. Also let Songbird fly. And yeah, our opponent has seen enough. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Fire Lord Azula, so definitely a must-answer commander. And Snuff Out is not going to work, since their commander is in part black. We do have a bit of card draw, and then a Buried Alive. So, this hand still has potential. Mostly looking for a reanimation spell. Okay, maybe wait a turn on the Surveil to get a bit more info. Alright, so now we can Surveil. And a Cruelty is a fine draw. Could also set up the Ripples. And then next turn pay the 1 to draw into at least a Cruelty. And still Night's Whisper. Yeah, that's maybe better. And then as long as they don't play their commander with haste, we can answer it with the Bone Shards. Ooh, opponent's gonna bounce the Ripples. Fair enough. Do I replay it? Probably still worth it. They can make me discard 2 for 5 mana. A more Surveil action. So if they're keeping up a bunch of counter spells, we can try to outvalue them with the Ripples. I'll pay 1 just to get a land here. Cast a Night's Whisper. I am losing a bunch of life, so I wouldn't be able to keep this up forever. But Persist was a great pickup. So next turn we could try Buried Alive into Persist. And especially if they tap out for Azula, they're gonna be in trouble. One of our better non-legendary creatures is Summon Bahamut, giving us some removal. Could also start with a Cruelty of Gix, Chapter 1. It's gonna be a Frantic Search. Typically a card that they want to cast while attacking with Fire Lord Azula to generate additional mana. For now, it is card disadvantage, but it is mana neutral. Plays a Talisman. They did have the Expedite, so they might have other ways to give Azula haste. And they are keeping up a bunch of mana. So, nothing I necessarily want to pay for to get back. So then, yeah, what's my plan? If we suspect a counterspell, would I rather get the Cruelty countered, or maybe the Persist? Maybe we prefer Cruelty getting countered here. It's also clunkier to play on future turns. Alright, and then, since it resolves, we could go for Sundering Titan here, since they have Island, Mountain, and Swamp. So that'll make it hard to cast Azula, unless they can counter the trigger somehow. Alright. Your go. Yeah, Sundering Titan never gets old. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing the Black Panther. So kind of a green-white ramp deck. Our hand's not bad. Start with a Duress. Turn 2 Ripples, turn 3 Connection, so we've got some nice value enchantments. Opponents with a lot of ramp. Fateful Absence can destroy creatures and planeswalkers. Yeah, the Fateful Absence might still be the more annoying card. Opponent goes for a Foundry, so they can cast Key to the Archive next turn. We'll get the Ripples going. unlikely to pay the 1 next turn since we want to deploy the connections. Could have also opted for Songbird since we have 2 big creatures in hand already. I mean, Entomb is certainly tempting, but what I'm missing is a reanimation spell. So I'll still stick to the plan here, play connections. And then next turn we can afford to pay the 1, make a treasure, draw a card. So I will be losing 6 life, probably. But that's where the lifelink comes in handy. Arden can also gain more life. So then the goal is to eventually discard Broodlord and Arden, bring back Arden, which in turn gets back Broodlord, can tutor up whatever I want. And from there we can hopefully figure it out. Now Black Panther makes one of these Vibranium tokens, which is very close to a Power Stone. Did draw the Coiling Rebirth. So now Shieldred, Toxic Deluge. Seems like a good one to get back. Or I can go for a Swamp. Because I do need to hit more land drops. So I'll let them keep their creatures, which could be a mistake. But then now I can play Songbird. And then set up my graveyard for next turn. Could still Infernal Grasp one of these. Yeah, we'll see. If they have an answer to the connections, I may need the treasure. Key to the archive, get some counters. Key to the archive could find a Frozen Grip with Split Second, destroying artifact or enchantment. I believe we can still sack a treasure in response since it's a mana ability. But I might be wrong there. Opponent just gets rid of a Day of Judgment. So yeah, now I think it's fine to take out Black Panther before they get to attack and make another token. I'm actually fine to trade for Gala Greeters. But then I am forced to discard now, so if they are sandbagging Graveyard Hate, I get punished. And the Broodlord can go too. Back to the command zone. Also reasonable to leave it in the graveyard, but we already have enough things to get back that I'm not going to run out anytime soon. Prophetic Prism draws. And an Esper Sentinel is acceptable. Alright, so we'll once again choose the first 2 modes. And then I can pay a life to get back a land. And then Coiling Rebirth, go for Arden, which can in turn maybe go for Shieldred, which can make them sacrifice a Sentinel and then reanimate more creatures afterwards. Or we can go for Broodlord to get immediate value in case our opponent has their own sweeper. That also makes sense to me. And then next turn we get Shieldred back. So then what am I interested in getting with a Broodlord? I mean, Grief is also an option, just to check out their hands. Yeah, I guess I don't hate that either. Or I can Broodlords and get... We already cast a Duress. I have Thoughtseize in hand, so I cannot get that with a Broodlord. Could get an Inquisition, but that may not get the more impactful cards. Or I can go for Broodlords and then get Reanimate, although we're also going to lose a bunch of life. Yeah, let's just go for Broodlord. And then maybe get another Reanimation spell in case they wipe the board. Something like a Necromancy seems fine. and attack. Could have also gotten another way to put creatures in the graveyard, but then we're missing the reanimation spell, perhaps. Alright, opponent does have an Elspeth, so that can destroy one of my 2 creatures. Takes out Arden, so now the Necromancy can bring it back. And then, once again, first 2. Actually, making a Changeling would have been worth it, because it has all types, including Demon, so then I could have immediately attacked with it with Arden to make up for the life loss. And then I will pay to get back my Evil Reawakened. So yeah, this would have been a good turn to get the Changeling, but let's now maybe Evil Reawakened, get back Arden once again. I'll pay the Sentinel tax. Arden triggers. Go for Shieldred. Take out Elspeth. Maybe the other way around, in case they're somehow sandbagging removal, but I guess with her mana that's not possible. Opponent sacks Sentinel, 2 Shieldred. And then we can reanimate 2 creatures next turn. So they need something special, and they don't have it. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing the unbeatable Squirrel Girl. Our hand has some good interaction, bit of ramp with Dark Ritual. We're missing a big creature to reanimate, to discard with my commander, but I can maybe tutor it up with Cruelty. So I think I'm giving this a shot. And then I'm not Dark Ritualing, so I may as well Surveil. And a Sundering Titan is definitely worth milling. Even their opponent's mono green, so at most we can destroy a forest and a swamp. The halfling, I think I'm happy to dismember. Alright, can play Songbird. I guess now with Urborg, we could potentially reanimate Sundering Titan and destroy 2 of the opponent's lanes, because they will also count as swamps. So that may be the play here. So then I just Dark Ritual out Liliana. Return Sundering Titan. And then choose one of each. So yeah, Urborg putting in work. Songbird can play defense and her opponent scoops it up. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Raph and Mikey once again. This hand is missing a instant speed removal spell for their commander. We can, however, zombify on turn 4, maybe get back a Gristlebrand, which can likely draw into more answers. On the play, is that good enough? Yeah, maybe. Just gotta find a 4th land, which we did. And then we should be able to zombify before the opponent can cast Raph and Mikey. Although if there is a line where they can ramp on turn 2 and then turn 3 cast an Ironcrag feat, I've been scarred by that before. Take my turn. So not a whole lot going on right now. And now reach the horizon, putting 2 lanes in play. So I could also get back a Galactus, which can blow up a land, so then they're still unable to cast their commander. Is that better? Or do I just hope to put Gristlebrand to use? Ideally find Snuff Out, which I can cast for free to take out Raph and Mikey. And that's 29 life. I can activate Gristlebrand a couple of times here. 4 times to be exact. I would get to draw 28 cards to try and find a snuff out, but then I guess I wouldn't have the life to cast it. So odds aren't necessarily in my favor. So maybe I prefer the Galactus line. Blow up your forest so it also cannot block. They do eventually get the opportunity to play Raph and Mikey. So maybe it is a Gristlebrand after all. And then see if we can find the snuff out. Not yet. Can use it again in the opponent's turn so we don't have to discard to hand size as much. I guess cut down could still be useful. I mean, yeah, next turn we're certainly in good shape. Can always trade for Raph and Mikey. The more life I lose, the more I maybe get in trouble if I don't find the snuff out. So maybe I should let them attack. And then we'll see what they hit. A Galactus, alright, so they can get rid of Gristlebrand. So I'm getting hit for 19. Next turn I can file Offering and get back my own Galactus. Find the Soulstone. May as well surveil. Don't think we have time for a Thoughtseize. Well, maybe we do. And then Vile Offering. Could also go for the Shark or summon Bahamut, but no, it's gotta be Galactus to exile the indestructible Galactus while destroying Raph and Mikey. And then we can gain 2. Okay, game goes on. And Itali is going to hit the Thoughtseize now. So that can take my Unbreakable Bond. And that's a bummer. And they hit an Arcane Signet. Yeah, keeping that Thoughtseize on top is certainly backfiring now. So then what's my plan next turn? I'm probably just dead. If I don't top deck here. Well, that works. So now we get a hasty creature instead. And that can just end the game for us. So maybe they actually did me a favor here. And a 1 and a 2. Probably should have cast a cut down on the land before reanimating on the off chance that it allowed them to cast some protection spell. Who knows? I'll take it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Toph, the first Metalbender. Our hands got some good interaction, missing a creature to reanimate, but a Dire Sight can maybe dig for one, and even surveil it into the graveyard. So we'll keep. Can maybe answer some early mana creature, Damnation can clean up. So not even sure if I want to play a Songbird on turn 2 yet. And no Mana Elf, but now we can Inquisition to have a look. And opponent's got Path and Safekeeping. Probably take the Path. Sneak Attack we don't have to worry about just yet. That way they cannot Path whatever creature I end up reanimating. And we've got enough removal where we can potentially get past the Safekeeping. So surveil a triplicate Titan into the graveyard, that's nice. So then the goal is to get to 5 mana for a Vile Offering to bring it back. So then Dire Sight is mostly looking for more lanes. Opponent off to a slow start, and Buried Alive is nice. Although, I think I still prioritize the card draw here. Alright, Swamp is good enough. So then next turn we could maybe Buried Alive. And then turn after Vile Offering. Getting back. If I put Arden into the graveyard, that would be a good target to then bring back a second creature. Don't have the Arden Ulamog combo, which is a possibility, but Buried Alive is one of the few ways to really assemble it. Opponent does resolve the sneak attack, so if they have something large, we could be in trouble as well. Okay, so just gonna bury some creatures alive. So I like Arden. Is there anything that can maybe blow up a sneak attack? Summon Bahamut could work. And then maybe go for a Galactus, which is another good target for Arden to reanimate. Okay, so we've got a plan to deal with the enchantment. Opponent does not have double green to play Toph with safekeeping backup. They're gonna run it out anyways. So Dismember could be an answer right now. Although the Vile Offering will already deal with Toph, so I don't feel the need to Dismember now. They can Earthbend too if they want. Okay, we'll try this. Get back Arden, destroy Toph. And then Arden gets back. Maybe starting with Summon Bahamut to destroy the sneak attack, and our opponent has seen enough. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Rofellos, so a mono-green ramp. This hand does not have a removal spell for Rofellos. We do have a Persist, so turn 2, Songbird, discard Broodlord. Turn 3, I can Persist back the Broodlord and find an answer to Rofellos. Yeah, I mean, this could still be a little slow, but the turn 1 Thoughtseize should help. Because your opponent will get to untap with Rofellos since they're on the play. And they've got an Elvish Mystic. So then Thoughtseize is mostly looking to take away some payoff that they could ramp into. So they've got a Banter Mole, a Blossoming Defense, and a Kogla. So I could just take the Kogla. Then how does their next turn look like? They can go Banter Mole into Rofellos. I play Songbird, discard Broodlord. Hope they don't top deck something big. And then they will have the Blossoming Defense to protect Rofellos on the following turn. But I can maybe get a Toxic Deluge. So I'll take Kogla. Alright, opponent not going for Banter Mole first. They want to keep up the Blossoming Defense. Fair enough. Entomb is a powerful option as well. Still gonna go for Songbird here. So then next turn I could Entomb plus Persist, whatever I want. So any non-legendary. Opponent found a Goreclaw. And they get to keep up Blossoming Defense. Okay, take my turn. And a Buried Alive. So we've got a lot of options here. Songbird, discard Broodlord. Can fly over. Can also sacrifice our commander to the Phyrexian Tower if the plan involves getting a Toxic Deluge at some point. So then, what makes the most sense? If I just persist back the Broodlord, I can Deluge now, which might honestly be the play. Back to the command zone. Persist the Broodlord, and then with Convoke I can cast a Deluge now. Have to do it for x equals 5. If I want to play around Blossoming Defense on Goreclaw, which means I also lose the Broodlord, unfortunately. But maybe that's still a good enough exchange. It does leave me without any additional creatures. And I don't have a reanimation spell in hand to do it all over again. Could also Deluge and not do it for 5. Yeah, I think we do need to answer the board, otherwise we're just gonna fall too far behind. And Deluge is the cleanest answer here. So let's get that. I think I'll do it for 4. And then if they want to save Goreclaw, they can. They did not. Alright, I guess that worked out. So I get to keep the Broodlord. Opponent can replay Rofellos, but then there'll be shields down on Blossoming Defense. And our opponent's just gonna scoop it up. Works for me. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Ashling Rekindled. So they can potentially ramp out a 4-drop. Our hand has a lot of quality removal, even a free snuff out. Dark Ritual's always exciting. So certainly have a keeper. Although we are still missing something to reanimate. Turn 1. I could Ritual out a Ripples. It's not the worst plan, but I could also save this to cast a reanimation spell. So maybe wait another turn on the Hidden Grotto. Next turn, play the Ripples, and then turn after, can maybe answer Ashling while paying the 1. And we found a swamp. So, sure, we'll Surveil. A Lively Dirge can put whatever I want in the graveyard. I feel like I'll naturally end up milling something useful, so I don't need to prioritize it. And I don't have any one specific card that I'm looking for. Ashling discards a land. Hang on to the Snuff Out for now. Mill a bunch of lands. Yeah, it's probably worth paying the life here. Can Surveil again. Say no to the swamp this time, and Edict. So then, best case scenario, next turn I mill some huge creature while drawing into a reanimation spell, or I can pay the 1 and then still Dark Ritual. Drew into Gristlebrand, and I certainly want to pay the 1 for reanimate here. Now our opponent does have a bunch of blue mana up, so they could have a counterspell in hand. So how do we want to sequence? Maybe start off with Songbird, see if that resolves. Yeah, that seemed to work pretty easily. So then I'll try Gristlebrand into Reanimate. Could also go for a Broodlord, to be fair, since I wouldn't be able to draw infinite cards with Gristlebrand. But I gotta try this. So we're at 11. I'll wait to draw 7 until I can maybe get an attack in first. Although if they bounce Gristlebrand, I'll probably want to draw 7 here. Yep. So I'm down to 4, but I can gain 2, and now Arden can maybe bring back Gristlebrand. And the Unbreakable Bond can be our reanimation spell. So we've got a plan. Definitely won't be paying 3 life this time. And then we want to discard Arden, discard Gristlebrand. Can keep the Summon Bahamut in hand a bit longer, I suppose. and go for Arden. And Arden can in turn reanimate something else. Gristlebrand's not a high priority. Could go for the Indestructible Galactus and blow up a land. Or we can go for a Broodlord, and then I can maybe get another discard spell, and then use the Convoke, tapping our untapped creature to cast it. So we had a lot of options here, but yeah, opponent's clearly too far behind. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Thor, a God of Thunder. Our hand is a bunch of 5 mana reanimation effects, no large creatures, no interaction or mana acceleration, so not quite what I need. Okay, this one's a lot more exciting. Turn 2 Unmarked Grave, turn 3 Reanimate. Have a Crabomination we can discard. Actually have options, since I'm not in a rush to play the Unmarked Grave. Unless my plan involves maybe discarding Crabomination and getting Arden to get it back. I think I just Knight's Whisper here, and then next turn I can reanimate and Grave in the same turn. Actually drew Arden. So then now what I can do is just play Songbird, discard both, reanimate Arden, get back Crabomination. And that looks nice. No interaction for us to worry about. And then hopefully the Crabomination delivers. Alright, opponent does not want to stick around. I'll take it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Raph and Mikey, another very popular matchup in Brawl. Our hand's got potential with Entomb into Persist. So on turn 2 we can already get whatever we want, as long as it's a non-legendary. And yeah, I'm not sure what that's going to be yet. Our opponent's not going to have any permanents for me to destroy with the Saga. So then... what else is good? I guess there's always Sundering Titan to blow up lanes. Yeah, let's see here. Not legendary Triplicate Titans, a relatively fast clock, or we can Hoarding Broodlord. Crabomination could also be sweet if we get lucky. But yeah, Broodlord can just tutor up whatever we want afterwards, which seems good. Opponent still gets to have their turn, so should have waited a bit longer. Wolful Haven. Alright, so we'll persist. Get the Broodlord. And then... I do not have a third land in hand. So then I might be looking for a cheaper reanimation spell. Snuff Out's also an option if we're looking for a free answer to Raph and Mikey. Or I can grab a Reanimate. And then we can discard the Sire of Seven Deaths and reanimate it back, which I don't hate. We already have a Shieldless Edict in hand in terms of removal. Going for Thoughtseize and immediately casting it with Convoke was also an option. So then I still hope to draw lands, so I can maybe play Songbird. Well, I guess I can do that regardless with Convoke, play Songbird and reanimate. And there's a Summon Bahamut, okay. Because yeah, with the Key to the Archive they can already cast Raph and Mikey, so then I might have been forced to keep up Shieldless Edict. Now what I can do is just play Songbird, discard Bahamut, reanimate it back, and destroy Key to the Archive. So no Raph and Mikey for you, and then next turn I get to keep up instant speed interaction. So in hindsight, going for Bahamut instead of Broodlord also could have worked out. Alright, opponent glimpsing. So Bahamut can destroy the Haven. And the Edict can still go after a non-token creature. Play the Signets. And then how much do we have in the air? 17, so I'm one short. You rarely get to live long enough to see Chapter 4 on Summon Bahamut. Next turn we would get to draw 2, and then it could close out the game for us. Opponent's gonna go for a Hail Mary, Raph and Mikey. We have the answer. Do not want to find out what our opponent's gonna cheat into play here. Although we could potentially survive an Emrakul attack. And our opponent seems very much dead. GG's. Draw 2, find a Blood for Bones. And we'll put them out of their misery. So yeah, we got to see this monoblack Reanimator deck in action, and Songbird is the perfect commander for the archetype, giving you that built-in discard outlet, so you don't need to worry about including those in the 99. And then the gameplay is going to be quite varied, because based on which big creature you draw into, that's the one that you'll likely end up reanimating, so then every game is going to result in a different win condition. So yeah, I have a lot of good things to say about the deck. It's probably not quite as broken as the superior Spider-Man Brawl deck, where you have that built-in reanimation effect in the command zone, which is maybe even more powerful. And then of course in blue you have access to a bunch more broken blue creatures that you can include. But if you want to stick to one color, then this is likely the way to go. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.